our June 16th Regional Transit Advisory Panel meeting, or as we will call for short, our RTAP. My name is Bob Crum. I'm your Executive Director here at the Hampton Roads Planning District Commission and the Hampton Roads Transportation Planning Organization. And on behalf of our organization, I want to welcome you once again to the regional building and into our RTAP meeting. Plenty of seats. Well, getting a little full, but we do have a couple of seats up here at the table, so everyone is welcome to come to the table and engage. I want to thank you all for coming out. Boy, if you put Monday in a photo and the weather today right next to it, it would be a match, wouldn't it? Right? So gloomy Monday with a little bit of rain, but I first want to start by thanking you all. This meeting is always heavily attended. And you have made a difference over the last several years on your advocacy for public transit in this region. And I want you to know that it's very much appreciated. Before I go any further, I think it's always important for us to know who all's at the table. So why don't we start? Well, first off, we'll start to my left. We'll go around, and if you could just introduce yourself and who you represent. This is the first test of the day. Please, Rob is live streaming our RTAP meeting. So when you click your button and it turns red, that means you're live. And then after you're done, if you could please hit it again. Next person, come on. So, Pavitra, you want to get us started?
Good afternoon. I'm Pavitra Parthasarathy. I'm with the Hampton Roads TPO.
I'm Maria Tkowski. I'm with the City of Suffolk, Suffolk Transit.
Good morning, Jason Salvers, also with the City of Suffolk.
I'm Jeannie Leonard, Transit Director for Senior Services of Southeastern Virginia.
Good afternoon, Quan McLaurin with the HRPDC and the HRTPO.
My name is Joanne Short, and I'm with the Planning Council in Norfolk.
Oh, you can't see this. I'm Linda Peck, Greater Norfolk Corporation.
I'm Jenny Sarah Taylor. I'm with several organizations, the League of Women Voters, Paratransit Advisory Committee, as well as Centera. I'm the facilitator of the stroke and TBI support group.
Good afternoon, Andrea McClellan, City of Norfolk. Fill in the blank.
Hi, Gil Bland. I'm with the Urban League of Hampton Roads.
Good afternoon. My name is Nakia Madry Smith, and I'm with Virginia Peninsula Community College.
Good afternoon, Sandra Brandt with Step Up Incorporated.
Good afternoon. My name's Brad Martin. I'm a civil engineer with WPL, and I'm here representing the Citizens Advisory Committee.
Hello, I'm Laura Chalk. I'm with Virginia Beach Vision.
Good afternoon, everyone. Andrew Damon with the City Manager's Office in City of Virginia Beach.
Good morning. My name's Noelle Pinkert. I'm with Hampton Roads Transit.
Hello, my name is Angelique Shank, and I'm with the City of Hampton.
Good afternoon, Josh Appizato, Commanding Officer, Naval Air Station Oceana.
Good afternoon, Mary Kate Andrus with Civic Leadership Institute.
Rick Dwyer, I'm the Hampton Roads Military and Federal Facilities Alliance.
Tracy Black, 633rd Air Base Wing, Joint Base Langley, Eustis.
Good afternoon, I'm John Wiley, and I'm representing WHRO's Emerging Leaders Board.
Jim Wofford with MacArthur Center, downtown Norfolk.
Hi, everyone. Andrew Pease, Project Manager with Arcadis.
Steve Florian, Hampton Roads Transit.
Hi, everyone. Ray Amoruso with Hampton Roads Transit.
Good morning, or afternoon, I guess, rather. Megan Gribble, City of Portsmouth.
Good afternoon. Kendra Green with the Elizabeth River Trail Foundation.
Good afternoon, Diane Kaufman with U.S. Senator Tim Kaine's office.
Todd Nichols, Hampton Roads Military and Federal Facilities Alliance.
Good afternoon. Command Master Chief Mike Avalon, Supervisor of Shipbuilding, Conversion and Repair, Newport News.
Alan Buddy, City of Norfolk, Department of Transportation.
Peter Shaw, retired Professor Emeritus of Business Administration, Tyler Community College. I'm also representing a Future of Hampton Roads that produced this publication. And if you'll notice, the opening article is about this room and how important it is.
Thanks, Peter. Why don't we just go around the edge real quick? Jeff?
Jeff Orlesky, HRTPO. Matthew Harrington, HRTPO. I'm Sean Asgren, and also with the HRTPO. Eric Walmart, PDC. Alternate PDC.
Good morning, Angela A. Comparson. I'm the district planning director at VDOT. Jennifer Conrad, HR Canada.
Fantastic. Thank you, everyone. Congratulations. You all passed the microphone test. That doesn't normally happen on the first round, so I appreciate it. All right, let's move through our preliminaries here, and then we'll get down to business. First item is approval or modification of our agenda. We've got some great items for you all to discuss today, starting with our climate pollution reduction grant program. You'll hear from Whitney Catchmark of our team on our first regional greenhouse reduction strategy and plan for the Hampton Roads region. This is the chance for you all to give input and help shape that plan. So look forward to your engagement with Whitney on that topic today. From there, Ray Amoruso is going to talk with us on an update on our HRT 757 Express that HRT continues to work in advance. Something that this group has asked for a number of times. You're going to hear an update from our consultant team and our HRT partners on the Unified Fare System study, and looking forward to an update on that that project. And then as time allows, Noel and I are going to lead you in a bit of a conversation in preparation for the next General Assembly session. Yeah, that's coming in January, but boy, it's going to be here before we know it. So a lot of work to do as we start to gear up for advocating for transit. Any objection or changes to any of those agenda items? Could I have a motion to approve, please?
So moved.
Moved in second. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Call for public comment. Anyone in the audience that'd like to provide some public comment today? Okay, seeing none, we do have the minutes from the last meeting. They were enclosed. Jeff Orlesky and team, thank you for your diligent work on those minutes. Could I have a motion and a second to approve the RTAP minutes from our last meeting, which occurred on January the 3rd? Have a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Thank you, Peter. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed? All right, so let's get to the exciting part now. So Whitney Catchmark, I'm going to have come on up to the podium. Whitney leads our Water Resources Department. What that means is Whitney's portfolio includes anything from drinking water to wastewater to stormwater to the Chesapeake Bay to sea level rise and resiliency. And she has also taken on our very first regional climate action plan. So the success of this item, frankly, is going to be you all giving Whitney ideas and input. I promise, Whitney, you're a very engaged and talkative group. So we're please support me on that. But Whitney, I know you're going to walk them through to sort of set the stage for this discussion.
Absolutely. All right. So I guess before I get going, I want to point out to everybody that in front of you, you should have a handout that focuses on the transportation recommendations we're going to go over. That's kind of at the end of my presentation. So, you know, if you don't care about all the other sectors, by all means, focus on that outline. And I also want to invite you to interrupt at any point in this presentation, because honestly, it is about trying to get feedback from people. And sometimes if you have to wait through 10 slides, you just don't care to ask the question when you get there. So yeah, just jump right in. As Bob said, this is the first time we've done this work. So it's a pretty big lift. We got a grant from the EPA to do this plan. It's a plan. The implementation part is going to be a next step. And The main theme of this is how do we reduce greenhouse gases and where do they come from in the region? This is a really quick refresher. Why do we care about this? Greenhouse gases destabilize our climate. Around here, we're seeing sea level rise. We're also seeing changes in rainfall patterns that cause flooding, and we also have some extreme heat on occasion. So these are the kinds of things that we're trying to deal with. But a lot of these recommendations have multiple benefits and really practical ones, like just lowering your energy bill. So here we go. Just to give you a sense of where we are in this process, back in June of 2023, we got the grant. Try not to do too many acronyms, but CPRG is the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant. We had to go super fast to write this priority climate action plan. It was sort of a light plan because we had to hurry. The reason we did it was this was our one shot in April to get implementation funds in this program. There's lots of pots of money that overlap with these recommendations, but the CPRG one was very strange, right? We got a chance to apply for implementation funds in that second year of a 4-year grant. We gave it our best shot. We put in for about $100 million in request. It was everything from EV charging to trails to LED streetlights. We failed. We didn't come home with anything. But hey, it turned out that there were tons of people who wanted this money, and all the states and big metropolitan areas around the country all have these planning grants, and we're all eligible. So the competition was stiff. So the last year, we moved on and we started working on making a better plan, trying to make our recommendations more Hampton Roads specific and actionable, practical and all those things. Last week, we had a pretty strong draft of suggested recommendations. So we put out a survey. I'm going to ask you all to fill out that survey and get 5 more people to fill out the survey, because what we want to hear is what are the best recommendations of this fairly significant suite of options. That brings us up to next steps on this slide. This fall, we have a steering committee that's going to vet our final report, as well as folks like you that we're talking to. We hope to present this to our commission in October because we need to turn it into the EPA by December 1st. After that, kind of regroup and be like, all right, are we going to invest more, time, capacity in implementation? And how does that affect our work plan or other agencies around the region? So that's the timeline. And now I'm going to jump into the different sectors. There's 6 of them. The first one I'm going to hit is energy. Most of the energy recommendations we're really going to leave to the state. They also have the same kind of planning grant. So things like the Clean Economy Act, we're not going to spend a lot of time trying to make suggestions, but we do have some ideas for the region. One is to focus on solar, trying to make that easier, both from a locality standpoint and from a resident standpoint. And then also looking at other alternatives like wind and nuclear and being more supportive, receptive to those changes. All right, next up is buildings. Buildings is actually a really big sector, but I'm not going to spend too much time on it today. But there's a lot of improvements you can do to make buildings more energy efficient. So there are localities that are already doing things to make their schools and their admin buildings and public works buildings more energy efficient. One of the big takeaways is having better data. As you can imagine, if you audit your energy consumption at a building level, you can really find some places where maybe you're not optimizing those systems. And then there's also programs like the weatherization program. That's a federal program that Virginia administers, and that helps people in low-income areas get grants to make their building or their house more energy efficient. One of the sort of weaknesses of that program is trying to find multifamily housing where the owner is interested in this program, when oftentimes, right, the renter would be the person who gets the cheaper bill. So lots of pieces on that front. Industry is not a huge sector in Hampton Roads. We don't have a bunch of smokestacks, right? But we do want to try to share this concept of sustainability planning where you can find a lot of savings. We talked to the Centera sustainability officer. She had already had a lot of successes. So one of the recommendations here is to get more people together in those spaces and learn from each other, which is a theme. All right. Next up, solid waste and wastewater. So the big goal for solid waste is just put less stuff in the landfill. So we're just following the lead of SIPSA and VIPSA, and they already have some big initiatives to change how they do things, but we do think there's recommendations there of trying to streamline and jointly message the advice on recycling, promoting composting, maybe doing it differently, having more facilities to do that. The second piece of this is wastewater. Wastewater treatment produces methane. It uses a lot of energy. And again, we have already have an entity to follow. HRSD has a lot of plans. You might have seen in the news lately, they already have an initiative to take the methane and turn it into natural gas and make it more of a benefit instead of a sort of a negative. So not a lot of additional things to add on that front. So this sector, agricultural and natural lands, is not a source of greenhouse gases, right? It's a sink. So it's a good thing. We want more trees. We want more wetlands. They help deal with this greenhouse gas problem and carbon sequestration. So we have a number of ways to encourage that. Again, there are a lot of other multiple benefits. And the last one you might not have thought about, but in terms of supporting local food production, that, you know, it's growing more things locally, but it's also spending less on transporting food to our area and less vehicle miles traveled. So that brings us to transportation. And I've got a number of slides. We tried to break this up into pieces. And here's specifically a place where I'd love to hear more from you. If you look on the handout, there are a whole lot more recommendations. But I mean, I feel like my slides have enough words on them as it is. So I'm just going to hit some of the highlights. But so one of the big measures, right, is to increase zero emission vehicle adoption. So we're sort of ask ourselves, like, how do you get more people to transition? Well, one area we can focus on, especially in this space, is government and school fleets and getting people to switch to alternate fuels or electric vehicles specifically. You're going to see in a lot of these, right? I say information sharing, but I want to give you, we are looking for really specific ideas. So this isn't just the throwaway thing, right? So we went to one of the Green Fleet Expos that Virginia Clean Cities put on, and I just heard a lot of helpful stories, right? We had a number of people coming from those fleet manager offices and say, I think Newport News presented on their conversion of all their school buses to propane, and they were very happy with the return on investment, felt like that was the right way to go. And somebody from another city was like, well, I'm trying to promote switching to propane, but people are afraid it's going to explode, so they don't want to drive them. So there's a lessons learned. How do you get people more comfortable with something new? One of the questions that came up was sort of how do you decide when is it cost effective to make changes? And these fleet assessment tools is sort of a playbook of, all right, what vehicles do you have? How many miles do you drive them? How old are they? Just trying to get a sort of mechanism to figure out what works for any locality or school system. And then another one I have up here is procurement practices. Another set of issues we heard was, I can't even get these vehicles. Or I can't get the kind of vehicle I want. So we thought one recommendation is to look into how do we get electric vehicles into government contracts as an option. And then also, is there any benefit of doing some sort of bulk procurement with more localities or a bigger order, so to speak, to get sort of to the top of the line? And we don't know how viable all of these options are, but that's why we're asking folks like you who are maybe closer to this space.
You told us to interrupt. Sorry, Whitney.
Yeah, please do.
One of the things when you're thinking about government and school fleets is that they also employ a lot of people who do the maintenance on these fleets. And those folks don't necessarily want to work on electric vehicles or propane-based vehicles. So there's going to be some education in that regard too. I think that's something I know from HRT's perspective when they went to electric vehicles, that was a piece of the puzzle. So I think that sometimes change is hard for a lot of people, but also once you have that sort of foundation already baked in place, you're going to have to deal with that as well. So I don't know how that addresses your recommendations, but it's a piece of the puzzle.
It's another piece that we have identified. I guess a couple things. whether or not people are trained to do the maintenance, whether or not one person mentioned, hey, I had to get new lifts to take a heavier car just off the ground to do the work. Like there's just a lot of different angles. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely a training need. We are trying to sort of narrow in on that. And if anybody wants to weigh in on programs that exist, we had heard there are some, but we're not sure if there's demand yet to establish the program. So it's sort of like, which comes first and how do
So-
we do that better?
So Dominion has had a program with several of the school systems to provide EVs, buses. There was a caveat or catch to it a while ago in terms of requiring that they would have basically use to the power of the batteries on those buses anyway, but I think Dominion would be a great resource. Moreover, if you're going to move to EVs, the infrastructure to create a charging system can oftentimes be also very a big lift because they have to have a transformer. I'm calling a friend here. Am I getting this right? And I know with HRT, we couldn't put them at Hampton because they couldn't charge at the Hampton facility. So another piece of the infrastructure piece and the maintenance is just something to think about. But Dominion, I think, would be a great partner as you were thinking through these things. They have a lot of research on that.
Thanks. Anybody else? Go ahead.
Hi, to piggyback off of Councilwoman, I'm not sure your title was, McClellan.
Andrea.
And she spearheaded a great program with smart cities and innovation. So she is a good expert on talking to her about EVs. But another way to say a plug with HRT, they started the South Side facilities, and that's going to have charging stations for the EV buses. So maybe they can learn and partner with HRT and learn more about what they're putting in place for infrastructures and future buildings and whatnot. And community, they're looking to also invest into the community for charging stations.
Anybody else? All right.
Anyone else? All right, Whitney.
All right. Well, so the second part of this is providing educational materials. And this is aimed both at residents and people who are making this decision about whether or not they want to switch to EV, and then also local governments and businesses. We feel like we can put more information in one place, try to establish a trusted source. But there's some information out there. So some of this is trying to figure out where there really is a gap. Also advocating and promoting incentives. It certainly is hard to keep up with all of these things about what's available, especially as programs, end and new programs get started. And then the last one, what we heard, at least from our steering committee, is people would love to see more case studies, especially the more local, the better. And if we could create a template that said, hey, kind of like, what did you do? What did it cost? What was your assessment? Like some of those details and with a point of contact would be very valuable. So this gets to many of the comments that you all made. We know that we need to expand the EV charging infrastructure to be effective and make this really appealing to everyone. So there's a couple things. One, we could do a regional plan. This has been talked about, but it doesn't seem like all that information is put in one place in terms of like, this is where we want to build out the charging infrastructure. And there's different ways to look at it, right? We could look at corridors where there's just a lot of high volume. We could look at underserved areas. We could look at areas we want to serve tourists because that's, there's a demand there too. So this was one of the things that was in our application for the implementation grant that we didn't get, but that might be an easy place to start. The next two bullets are really sort of the same thing, which is as new development gets put in place or redevelopment, how do you prompt more, installation of EV charging infrastructure? There are other places in the country where there are mandates where if you build a certain size multi-housing complex, you have to put a number of spaces. Same with like commercial. So this is one that we just put in our report as a point of discussion and see what the appetite is to move forward with that kind of thing. So any more comments about this before I move on to the next recommendation?
Excuse me. As for the regional plan, do we know or have any knowledge of which cities in Hampton Roads may have a EV charging infrastructure plan or like a citywide fleet implementation plan? I believe there's one for Virginia Beach. I may have contributed to it a while back, but I don't know if there's been any updates since then, but I'm not aware of any other cities off the top of my head.
You're welcome to jump in.
I don't think we did a full-blown review of the cities in Hampton Roads, but I know one of our staff members, Dr. Rob Case, he did look at some ways we could look at where infrastructure needs to be, but it was it was not a full-blown analysis, but it could be a good starting point. When he did that, he had looked at some of like, where are these plans? So yeah, that would be.
Can I ask just a quick question, Whitney? I thought this would be interesting. How many people drive an electric vehicle at the table? 2, 3. How many see themselves going to an EV in the next 5 years? Anybody considering?
Sorry, Bob, I'll come back to that. I have to make a note of it on your.
No, sorry. For some reason, my phone wanted to talk to me there. So, okay. No, just curious. Any more comments for Whitney on these items?
So Norfolk does have a plan, but, and we did a survey. But unfortunately, whomever wrote the survey doesn't seem to actually drive an EV because the questions were not really great. So you have to have somebody who actually utilizes and drives an EV to be part of this process because otherwise it's very difficult to.
So could I ask Whitney, if you don't mind? So we have 2 that are driving now. What's the biggest challenge to driving an EV in Hampton Roads that Whitney ought to be looking at in her planning effort? Are there any recommendations that?
People in my city don't like the maker of my car. Otherwise, I've been driving since 2018 and have no issues. I've driven, her name is Ruby, and I've driven her to South Carolina, to New York, to Pennsylvania. I have no issues. I do think, though, as a household, to be completely EV, we've decided not to because we want to have one other option that is an internal combustion engine. Otherwise, I have no issue.
Brad, any thoughts?
Like I say, I've gone back to gas after a experiment with hybrid, so I'm not a good test case.
All right.
But I do have a question for Whitney talking about this topic. Zero emission vehicles and EVs are really 2 different horses. I mean, they really are. Is there one that's applicable for school buses and one that's applicable for public utilities, trucks, or where's the differentiation become? Because it really is 2 different classifications, isn't it? Or am I wrong?
I think it is, but I think we're just still exploring that because there are kind of different options and like how kind of ambitious you are and what you need. So I feel like the propane is and natural gas. Like there's a couple of people have moved to those in that direction. I think Chesapeake switched their trash trucks. I think the propane. So you see different, approaches. Electric vehicles and the size vehicle you need to do the job you're doing. Yeah, they're not always available, especially right now. I think there's a lot of backlog. We heard buses, that's also not easy. They're not easy to get. They're expensive up front. So you really have to do the sort of math to see if it's a good fit. But yeah, I don't have probably the answer that you're looking for as far as that analysis. I don't know. I'm still learning a lot about this. So if somebody else wants to give their thoughts on where, zero emission fits in versus EVs, by all means, jump in.
So Ben, I know you've had your hand up and then we'll go over here.
Yeah, so just to share with everyone, we were awarded funding for a zero emission feasibility study. So on WADA's side of things, we're going to start taking a look at that. And as we get further into that study, if there's things that come out that we can share with you all that may be helpful, certainly happy to do that.
2 parts. So I think the to your comment about the difference between zero emissions and EVs, I think from the conversations I've heard, a lot of people don't consider EVs to be necessarily zero emissions, depending on where the source of the electricity is coming from. So if it's coal burning, for example, that's obviously not zero emissions per se, but the EV itself is zero emissions by itself. So I think it's just a matter of how it's categorized and how deep you want to go and how far back you want to get to the source of the power. And then secondly, I know that HRT had mentioned in terms of electric vehicles that there were some variables that may not have been fully anticipated necessarily for using the buses that are electric, for example, idling time in traffic, and then just the amount of power that it takes to accelerate and decelerate and different things like that that can vary depending on what the route is and if the route's, for example, on a highway versus a city street, things like that. So that would be something that I would highly recommend keeping in mind when looking at like a regional plan or any kind of analysis. And when it comes to like school buses, I'm sure that would also be something similar with the amount of stops and starts that they have.
Let's see, in terms of this charging infrastructure, just a couple of ideas that came out as when we were talking about this. There is a desire, right, to make these as useful to as many people as possible. So a lot of local government staff have sort of asked, like, how do you build a charging facility that both serves fleets and government vehicles, but also serves private vehicles? So they're like, can you show us more templates of like sites where people have done this, how they set it up, whether there's a fence, where it's a matter of how you pay. We had some other discussions about how we could build a network of charging facilities for all government fleet. So if you were driving from Suffolk to Newport News or to Virginia Beach, like that you potentially could stop in other places and be able to charge trucks. So, I appreciate so much, attempt for sort of collaboration and efficiency, but all these things are hard. So we're still really trying to figure out where to start if we want to, invest in this, because there's still like a need for a lot more charging for sure.
Sir, sorry I missed you
Oh,
before.
no worries. The key is the education part, having the people educated on what the vehicles can and cannot do. That's a big thing. And then the charging stations, like I'll give you an example. I have an Audi e-tron, and there's only certain places that you can charge it. But on a great note, when it gets low, your screen comes up and said, okay, these are the places you can charge. So you better get there or you're going to be out. So, but again, it just goes back to the education process. It definitely is a good thing.
Anybody else?
Yes, sir.
I do. I have one question. I'm a little concerned about the sustainability of a plan like this, with major cuts to federal funding and this being a grant from the EPA. What guardrails or things have been kind of put in place to carry out the momentum of these plans?
Well, yeah, I'm worried too. This is really hard. The timing is kind of terrible, but we have the money to do a plan, and we've never had a plan before. So we're doing our best to put everything on paper and get a lot of eyes on it, and then we'll figure out what we can move forward with, because we probably are better set up, and Bob Pavithra may correct me, but to do some of the transportation things, because at least we have some programs that overlap. Some of the recommendations in buildings, we really don't have an existing program that we're building off of. And so some of this is pretty tough to figure out. But then if you take a step back and you look at all of the programs out there, and even philanthropy and groups that want to see these changes made, there's certainly some opportunity to move forward. But yeah, we don't have that all figured out yet.
I think too, what I would add to that is that there is a lot of uncertainty today. But as the politics fly up here and that roller coaster ride is always happening in DC, It's really regions and people like you doing the work with us that lay a sound foundation for planning and understanding what we want to move towards. And we keep turning that flywheel every day. And, you know, these recommendations that we come up with this year, maybe now is not the time for implementation of some of them, but a few years from now, there's still going to be really good ideas, right? As we keep setting this groundwork and we keep moving forward, there's other places to go for funding, as Whitney said, other than the federal government, even though they need to be a major part of this. But we do think now's probably, it probably makes now the most important time for planning, right? So that we're ready and that we're organized and that we have a cohesive strategy to look forward in a strategic way. So we share your concern, but we also think there's an opportunity here if we can get prepared. Yes.
Hi, this is Janice again. Have you thought about reaching out to the different transit agencies and having meetings with them to kind of have a think tank?
So we need to circle back. We started out with a steering committee that we reached out to transit, and so we haven't really sat down just with the transit agencies alone and got their feedback. But now that we have a little more specific recommendations, that's a good fit. And hopefully today is a day that y'all can sort of get up to speed on what we've been talking about, and then figure out how we can refine it and make it better.
Dr. K.
Good afternoon, everyone. In thinking about the education component, I think in order to ensure that at the last meeting, we talked about the mass population of younger generation, like working class, that are leaving Hampton Roads. So including an idea is to include students from the local colleges and universities intentionally in your think tanks and in those conversations, so that the students, because that's our next generation of workers in Hampton Roads, right? So that not only they're feeling seen, valued in this process, but they also know that this is happening in Hampton Roads. And I think that will be an encouragement for them to know that Hampton Roads is a place that that they can be viable, and that they will have, that we're working on the type of transportation that they need. So just including colleges and universities specifically in some of the conversations for the students.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great comment. I might propose that we allow Whitney to get through the next. She has some other segments here, and then we can maybe have a conversation, because you're going to see it's about more than EVs, right? And Kendra, I know you've been waiting for this part, right?
There's not much more, but this is the one that we assumed you might have the most input on, and it sort of builds off what Dr. K said. Like, as far as the center section of that, which is because this whole slide is about reducing vehicle miles traveled. That center section is about supporting more transit-oriented development and recognizing that a lot of people would like to get out of their cars. They'd like maybe to be able to walk to work and like, or hop on transit or whatever. So that's probably one of the hardest ones to figure out what a viable recommendation is of how things might change. So we were thinking maybe just starting with workshops that talk about the advantages, and maybe reaching out to more people who are looking for a different kind of development pattern. Let's see. The first one, these are they're all together, but they're quite different, right? The first one is about expanding, improving public transit. I know y'all have talked a lot about that. It seems obvious the place to start is the 757 Express, building that out, making it as good as it can be, potentially expanding that idea to the other transit authorities, looking at what makes transit work best, things like looking at the bus stops and how walkable those areas are, how inviting they are, anything we can do to make that system work better and serve more people. And then the bottom one is about enhancing infrastructure for active transportation. So we spent a lot of time in this process early on talking about trails. There's been so much work, right, and trying to have a vision for regional trail system, but getting the funding to expedite that and make it happen, there's room for improvement there. We also wanted to just highlight a couple things like the desire to have more sidewalks, to have wider roads in rural areas that might support biking. And I think another one I have on there is to look at recommendations for scooters and bike share and those kind of programs. So again, if you look at the piece of paper in front of you, there are a lot more. And I welcome comments on any of them or what we're missing. But, trying to figure out realistically what we might do next so that we can reduce the number of, car trips and stuff it's a big lift, and it's a great chance to get recommendations in front of a lot of people.
Dr. K, this really goes back to your last comment about important populations to engage. We held some brainstorming sessions in this room with young professionals. Everything they were talking about is up on Whitney's screen here, right? Density, walkability, transportation choice and options, public transit, walking and biking trails. No matter what's going on at the federal level, these are the winning characteristics of winning metropolitan regions. Anybody read about Bentonville, Arkansas lately, and how many miles of trails they've built? Go ahead, Kendra.
Sorry, it's incredible, and I know that that's spearheaded. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Walmart, correct? I mean it is unbelievable how that has. It's an incredible case study on how that has transformed that town and. Not just health wise and transportation wise and community wise, just the infrastructure. It's an incredible case study. So.
So any suggestions for Whitney? How can she be strengthening this section just to give people choices other than the automobile, walking, biking, other modes, public transit, et cetera? Any thoughts?
Whitney, just going through this is a great list, by the way. Thank you for having this at our seats. Under number 4, which is enhance infrastructure to promote cycling, pedestrian, micro, et cetera. I see widen rural roadways for safer biking. I don't see in here anything about helping create best practices for the use of bike lanes. Because, and trust me, bike lash is a national issue. Bike lanes are very controversial. But until you have a network, not a little bike lane here and a little bike lane there, that actually connects the community, people aren't going to use their bikes. And there's a lot of data and learning. We have a lot of learning from the city of Norfolk, some good things and some bad things. But I think bike lanes would be really important. Am I missing something? Is it in here? I see a lot of trails.
No,
Trails
that's a
are
good point.
off-road.
Yeah.
But bike lanes are really the things that people are going to use to commute. So I would encourage including that.
Kendra, would you mind just talking about your use at the Elizabeth River Trail?
Sure.
You've got some great numbers.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. Thank you for bringing that up, Andrea. So, so the Elizabeth River Trail is designed to be ideally 100% off-road, right? So that is the goal for it, and we really specifically try to say it is not a bike trail, right? It is not. It's multimodal. But last year, our 2024 numbers saw over 672,000 trail users, trail interactions. So incredible numbers within that 10.5 miles. And we have a specific trail counter, a specific location in which the trail counts are higher than anywhere else, and we attribute that to daily commuters. That's right on our Freemason area. So, but I think the thing I wanted to say too about bike lanes, we do try to say that we are not the bike lanes, right? Because that can be polarizing. But I just literally returned last night from a trip to New York City. And I know there's no comparison between New York City and Norfolk in this region. However, it was hard not to notice the bike lanes and how prominent they are and how prominent the signage everywhere was for the bike lanes. The signage is everywhere. I mean, there's just the bicycle signage. So even if we had just, again, the bicycle signage as part of the infrastructure is very helpful. Did you want me to address anything else, Bob, or just the usage? Sorry.
No, that's great. And real quick, anybody have an idea of how many miles of biking and walking trails or in not bike lanes, but biking and walking trails in Hampton Roads, the 17 local governments? How many would think under 50 miles? 100 miles? 100, 150? Yeah, almost 150 miles we have today. And we have them all documented, and we can I'm sorry? Not connected, but the extension of the Capitol Trail, Trail 757, the Southampton Roads Trail, will connect them all. We're working on plans to extend the 52-mile Virginia Capitol Trail down to Fort Monroe and the peninsula, across the ferry in Surrey, connect down to Suffolk, and then get into the Southampton Roads Trail, and it takes you the whole way to Virginia Beach oceanfront. Virginia Beach had some really exciting news this year with funding as they're advancing that. Kendra's connecting into that with her Elizabeth River Trail, so there's some good momentum. We just got to keep it going.
A quick question in a different direction. How friendly are the walking trails for people that are disabled? Because many people will use their motorized wheelchairs and scooters. So how friendly did we think cover that?
I mean, I can speak to Norfolk because the city of Norfolk aims to be a fully accessible city, and the city itself has been working very hard on its accessibility plans. So the Elizabeth River Trail, we have areas that are some in the historic neighborhoods where there are cobblestones, where we indicate that there might be some accessibility difficulties, but for the most part, everything is designed to be 100% ADA accessible. All of our trailhead shelters are designed to be ADA accessible, and yeah, so that is part of the infrastructure for the trail. Yeah.
But I will say, I think that's great comment for us, and as you know, we build in recommendations into our plan that obviously needs to be a consideration with all of these facilities. So thank you for that. Any other recommendations for Whitney? What are we missing? Anything? Yeah.
I just want to say, I noticed that you included walkability analysis of bus stops, and then also just missing sidewalks. And that is desperately needed throughout the entire region. I believe there's something around the 300-mile total of missing sidewalks in the city of Portsmouth, let alone other cities as well. And then just the walkability of transit stops. I don't know if any of you follow the worst transit stop in America competition that they have on social media, where people can take a photo of a really bad transit stop, like one on the side of a cliff next to a guardrail, and there's not really a spot for you to stand, like that one won a few years ago. But I know that in my experience working Norfolk, Virginia Beach, and now Portsmouth, a lot of people do not want to use transit if they have to walk through grass to get to a stop, or if they have to stand in an area. So just that connectivity, and then also on the note of accessibility, that's really important, I think, to make sure that all of the transit stops have access to sidewalks that are appropriately sized and maintained to promote access to that, just for anybody who might want to use it as an option.
Absolutely. Whitney, any more items that you're looking for? Thoughts?
No, I'll finish up, but I do appreciate the comments today. And just as an option, like I said, you have a handout in front of you. If you want to mark it up and just leave it with, these are good, these are bad, whatever, I will welcome any kind of feedback. Like I said, it's a lot of different sectors to learn about. And so we know we've pulled these recommendations from a lot of local staff, but we might be missing stuff. Yeah,
So
go ahead.
I know we have several members of the military here. We have Harumpa here, but we can't be effective as a regional climate study without our partners in the federal and military. They just make up so much of our land use. How are we incorporating them into this planning, other than y'all being here today? Sorry.
Yeah, I would say like we had identified a steering committee member, but we really haven't had a lot of input from DoD, and so that's a weakness right now, and we could definitely do better.
So Whitney, is there a link or something that we could circulate to RTAP that would give people the opportunity? Thank you, Whitney. You read my mind.
There you go.
So this might be a great opportunity for our military partners, but Whitney, I think for RTAP, like you said, we could use their help getting this out there.
Absolutely. So yeah, this is the big takeaway today is you can either go to the website, which is right under the how to get involved, or you can use your camera to scan that QR code. That survey is going to be up for about a month. You know, I think our last survey, we got 200 people. We would love to get 5 times that many. And as people mentioned, different perspectives. It's just hard to get the reach. We put out a press release, but yeah, we just need more people who care about these things or don't care about these things to weigh in so that we know where we should invest our efforts, both in what we put in the report, but also what we pitch as next steps that are that make sense, that there'll be some momentum. And like you said, we don't sort of lose this opportunity to move the best of these recommendations forward.
This is where we really can use your help. If you could please send this to any of your distribution lists, any of your friends, your neighbors, your colleagues. This is the chance to move the needle on some of these different choices for transportation in our region, but we really need everybody's ideas on this. So really that would be our big ask for today. Let's get this out there and let's get the community engaged. Whitney, Quan, Matt are working on a number of strategies, but nothing quite works like people like you sharing with your network. So be great to get the military, as many personnel as possible engaged. Dr. K, we would love to have our colleges and universities and reach those students and get them engaged. And it just goes through everybody's connections around the table. So, all right. Whitney, thank you. And for taking this on. I mean, Whitney's got a big enough, there's a lot of frustrations with this, but we just tackling one of the biggest issues our world has to deal with, right? But small steps and input like this is what's going to help us get some meaningful things moving forward. So thank you very much. Okay, Ray. Ray Amoruso, I know everybody knows, always appreciate him coming here with the RTAP to share progress and to share updates. And Ray's going to talk to us today about the Hampton Roads Transit 757 Express. So Ray, appreciate you being here with us again.
Thank you, Bob, for the kind words. Good afternoon, everyone. Just a quick update on 757 Express. Whitney, thank you for acknowledging the importance of high-frequency transit network. You want people to ride transit? Charge $30 or $40 a day to park your car. You'll see how fast they'll be on transit. But we're not New York City. Okay, 757 Express. You may all recall, we're very generous, grateful the General Assembly approved the funding to establish the Hampton Roads Regional Transit Fund back in 2020. And there are 3 primary funding sources. A lot of people around this room helped HRT get this through the General Assembly, and we're very grateful for that. I won't linger on it, but the grantor's tax, regional transient occupancy tax, and then the recordation tax together brings the money into the fund that helps pay for the high-frequency service and the investments in capital infrastructure. So what's eligible in the 757 Express program? All capital and operating costs associated with from planning through ongoing operations and maintenance. So that's buying buses, building passenger facilities, bus facilities, operating the service, keeping things in a state of good repair. They can both be for expansion projects, expanding the footprint of HRT in terms of fleet size, as well as taking care of the assets that we have associated with the service. HRT has two classifications of routes that fall within the 757 Express program. The 13 regional backbone routes that connect our highest employment areas and biggest destinations with high-frequency service at 15-minute service, as well as our what we formerly called MAX and Peninsula Commuter Service, the Route 900s and the Route 400s that are specifically geared to serving major employment sites and matching peak shift reporting and departure times. This is a list of those 13 routes on the left. You can see them. There's something in every city. Many of our routes operate in multiple cities. The middle part, we're missing the MAX 980 somehow. I forgot that out to Amazon in Western Branch, Chesapeake, and Suffolk, but it is on that list. A new one is going to come online next fiscal year from Gloucester Park and Ride down to the Amtrak station, then onward to Newport News Shipbuilding with a couple of stops, and then ending at NNTC. And then the 400s, while they're not all-day service, they are specifically geared to match Huntington Ingalls' very busy shipyard shift report times. This is a map that kind of depicts graphically of where the routes are. There are 10 on the south side in terms of the 13 routes, 3 on the north side. You can see some of the statistics. It's really about better reliability and faster commute times, but also providing connections to what we call feeder routes. It's hard to make a one-seat ride in this region because of the region is defined by its bodies of water, and so you often have to transfer. But if you have higher frequency service, you're less clock dependent and can just wait 15 minutes for another bus. First and foremost, in order to provide that high frequency service, we needed to buy 48 more buses. We have 44 of them on property now. There's another 4 that we'll be placing in order and will be coming in shortly. Technology upgrades, it's already available for our customers on the 3 VB Wave routes. We're slowly anticipating unrolling this technology upgrade to the entire system this calendar year and to early next year. We call it modern technology, but it's really geared to improving the customer experience. At your fingertips via your mobile device, you'll have real-time information that tells you trip arrival, trip delays, and allows you to do trip planning. And really exciting mobile ticketing where you can, your choice as a customer to load up as much or as little fare media you want connected to an account that you have. You'll always have a cash opportunity, but if you move around the country and use transit, you know that more and more people have moved away from dropping coins in a box and instead have your mobile device linked to an account. You'll also be able to go into supermarkets and buy a card like you would for Cracker Barrel, go to the cash register and tell the cashier that you'd like to have $50 loaded on that card. You can come back in a month and reload it as well. So this is really exciting. Like I said, it's already in operation at 3 Virginia Beach Wave routes, and we anticipate bringing it out to the entire system over the course of this year and into next year. So RTS service and the implemented routes today, I wish they were more. The only limiting factor that we have is the number of bus operators. But what's really exciting with the 3 routes that we have, and I'll start with the Route 20 on Virginia Beach Boulevard that operates from downtown Norfolk Transit Center all the way out to the oceanfront at the Virginia Beach Convention Center. This is the one that we last implemented that went in November of 2023. Our monthly average increase since that time from the before condition when we only had 30 minutes or 60-minute service has been on average, any month in the year, we've been experiencing about a 34% increase in ridership. This is a big game changer to bring 15-minute service. It's the backbone route connecting hospitality and restaurant workers to the oceanfront, to the workforce that's in the inner city of Norfolk, as well as providing connectivity to light rail at Newtown Road and a lot of other destinations along Virginia Beach Boulevard. 15-minute service truly increases ridership. If you miss a bus or for whatever reason a bus trip is delayed, there'll be another one by in 15 minutes. What's really nice to see is the related routes, routes that connect to that east-west route, north and south, have also experienced a 21% average monthly increase since its implementation. And I've listed all the routes there. I don't expect everyone to know those routes by heart, but if you think about it, everything flows basically north and south from the southern regions of Chesapeake or the northern regions of Virginia Beach and Norfolk to get on that east-west connector that can bring you into downtown Norfolk at the oceanfront. Really exciting to see the related ridership increase in the after condition as well. Route 112, which was the first one we put in back in October of 2022, on an average monthly basis, phenomenal ridership growth. Jefferson is the backbone of the peninsula, and it practically runs from the very bottom of the peninsula all the way up to Patrick Henry Mall and on. We've seen a 70% increase in ridership. We're above FY19 ridership levels, pre-pandemic ridership levels. We've exceeded them on a monthly basis on the Route 112. It truly is the workhorse of the peninsula. And what's nice, and in this case, instead of an east-west route, we have a lot of routes that come this is a north-south route, so we have a lot of east-west routes that connect to it. The related routes have seen a 50% increase in ridership, which is really exciting to see as well, feeding that 15-minute service. And then the Route 114 on Mercury Boulevard, primarily running in Hampton, but the small end of it at the western end connects Newport News Transit Center. An average monthly increase since May of 2023 of 54%, with related ridership increases of 45% on the connecting routes. It really speaks to the power of high-frequency service. When you're not dependent on an hourly service, and a lot of these routes before this were either running 30 minutes or hourly, you oversleep, you miss the bus by 5 minutes, it's another hour to wait, maybe 2, depending when you get to the bus stop. When you have 15-minute service, you have another one coming by, it makes you less nervous as a human being, feels more like an experience with an automobile, and it really does transform how people think about ridership on public transportation and maybe making that choice to leave their car at home. I believe these 3 routes that we started with are kind of like a benchmark that what we can expect for the other 10 routes. Our next route up is going to be the military highway route, the Route 15, running 15-minute service from Evelyn Butts in Norfolk all the way down to Robert Hall in Chesapeake. The only limiting factor we have right now is bus operator availability. We have 68 routes in our system, 13 of these regional backbone, another 13 related to MAX and PCS, and then 34 what we call local bus routes. Trying to put out over 2,200 trips a day during the course of a service day with a workforce of about 431 operators that we have today, when we really need about 474 operators just to maintain the service we have today. We're chronically short between 40 and 50 operators. We've been hesitant to roll out another 15-minute service because we're already 50 short. We're working very hard to bring people on board, and we do a pretty good job. We bring them on board, it's retaining them. The challenge for the agency is what we're calling burnout. You have a compact with your customers and with the people that fund the service. If you're putting out 2,200 trips a day and our municipalities, federal government, state government are giving you the money to put that out, you want to meet all 2,200 trips a day out of your garages on north and south side. If you miss them, you're kind of failing your customer. And what we don't want to do is put out another 15-minute service until we comfortably know we have enough operators so they don't jeopardize what we see as a big success story for 15-minute service. So the Route 15 was targeted for this October to be implemented. We're going to hold off this October and wait until May of next year when we can bring more people on board. We're burning our operators out because what happens is mandatory overtime in order to make our commitment to the 2,200 trips makes them work on a day off. What we're finding after 18 months, they kind of move on. It's a challenge that's not unique to HRT, but is very much so prevalent in the entire country. It's a tough job to drive a bus. But with that said, we really feel confident that as we continue to roll it out, we'll see these kind of ridership increases on all of our routes. Now, in addition to operating services, There's a large component of the RTS program that's capital related, because remember, these monies we get from the General Assembly allow to improve the customer experience in different ways. The most visible one that I know everyone has seen is bus stop amenity investments, and these can range anything from a simple bench to lighting, a shelter, trash receptacle, bus pad, ADA accessible sidewalks that connect to the greater sidewalk. Our goal in the first slug is to have 620 passenger amenities added to our 2,700 bus stops before the RTS program. We had about 185 bus stops out of 2,700 bus stops that had some type of passenger amenity. We've been working really hard to get as many of these installed and working with our 6 city partners to ensure that the public right-of-way is there and the connecting sidewalks are bringing you. No good to drop a shelter down when you have grass leading up to it. So it's a partnership with the cities. This table kind of shows in the early, we've added 294 bus stop locations with new shelters and benches and receptacles and solar lighting. And some stops, which perhaps the public right-of-way is so narrow you can't get a shelter, but we've added some 77 of them with benches, so at least you have a place to sit down. I've said it many times, and many of you have heard me say this before, the customer's first experience is not when they board the bus and say good morning or good afternoon to the bus driver. It's how you treat them waiting at the bus stop. Are you forcing them to sit in an overturned shopping cart, standing in an open ditch with trash and water, sitting on the grass with your child, in the sun, in the snow? That's how we used to treat them because we had no capital program. There is nothing more important that you can make, and this is such a win-win because relatively speaking, it's a low capital cost investment, than to treat them with dignity, keep them protected out of the weather elements as they wait for the buses, have real-time information at that stop so they know when it's coming or they know there's a delay. So that when I get on the bus, they'll say, I can ride this again because I've been treated with dignity. So there's, this is just the first slug of 620. We're halfway there. Then we're going to target another 620. And great big thank you to our city partners who have worked really, really close with us to help identify the public right-of-way, help identify locations that can accommodate a full-size bus shelter, and work with the private sector to ensure we're not blocking any critical business storefront, but placing them where they needed. Passenger transfer facilities. My favorite one here is Evelyn Butts. Out of our 2,700 bus stops, because even if it's a transfer transit facility, it's still a bus stop. Evelyn Butts is the 3rd busiest in the city of Norfolk. That photo on the left is to present day conditions. If anyone's been out at Avenue J over in that neighborhood, Oakwood Civic League, it's behind the water tank. It's a lineup on both sides of the street. It's adjacent to a junkyard, basically, not very visible. And as you watch, people make connections. We have 8 routes that come together at this location. It's a function of the old streetcar network where everything came together when it was serving Ocean View. It's still pretty much the same way. People run up and down and cross the street here and there to make connections to the buses. There's some shelters. It's not a very friendly pedestrian environment. There's no customer amenities, no restrooms. At night, it can be a scary place because that water tower is so big and throws such a shadow. We have found a piece of property very near here. We're going to close on that property come August. The concept is, I have a picture of DNTC there on the right, to have a passenger facility that has customer restrooms, operator restrooms, fare vending equipment, real-time passenger information, and an ordered sense of how the buses, the 8 routes, come together in their own dedicated bay, centered around that building like we have at DNTC, off the street, in an environment where passengers are protected and have opportunity to talk to someone with perhaps a customer service center. The design is still being made out. So this is really exciting, and it'll be off of Chesapeake Boulevard. We haven't closed on the property yet, but it's very close to here. Very exciting. Our 3rd busiest, we have I would say over 1,800 passengers a day, human beings a day, going in and out of this facility. Robert Hall, a very big transfer facility down in Chesapeake on the left-hand side where that old Kmart used to be, which is now, I think, an Amazon processing center. We have a lineup that literally people run from that Burger King almost by Battlefield Boulevard, all the way up and around where it curves for people to make connections to 6 routes. Just a couple of basic shelters and not much else, no real place for a person to use a restroom or run in to purchase something. We're working with the city of Chesapeake to identify a piece of property to build something very similar to what we have at Ward's Corner in Norfolk, which is the photo I show on the right, that has, again, a configured bus bay assignment for the people with customer and operator restrooms and fare vending equipment and real-time information. This is our 8th busiest location out of 2,700 bus stops in terms of the amount of human beings that move through this facility. A very important one in Chesapeake because a lot of routes come together at the end of the line here. This is one of our newest, busiest locations, the Virginia Beach Tidewater Community College campus. The current location we have has basically 2 shelters and enough stacking space on the ring road to allow 3 buses. We have 8 routes that come together here. 3 of them are max routes, but we have 8 routes that come together. One will have 15-minute service. We worked in partnership with Tidewater Community College and identified an area in the surface parking lot further down the ring road that showed in blue that we're going to be able to build a configured bus transfer facility for our passengers and an arrangement that they can use bathrooms in the nearby school building as well as for operators. Perhaps the biggest investment to date in the RTS program is the new Southside Bus Operating and Maintenance Facility. We hope that is located in Virginia Beach. We're working with the city of Virginia Beach. For those of you who know HRT, we only have 2 operating divisions, one on the north side off of Victoria Avenue and Victoria Boulevard in Hampton, the city of Hampton, and our original site, which used to be the trolley car site in 18th Street in Norfolk. There's no room at the inn anymore, folks. As we get these new buses in and as we start to invest slowly in electric vehicles where we lose some of the service lanes for charging infrastructure, we do not have the capacity to grow our fleet and store them safely. Also, it's very inefficient to deploy everything. We have a very huge service footprint on the south side in the 4 cities. We're deploying everything out of 18th Street practically in downtown Norfolk, and they're running what we call deadhead to get to their first point of pickup in the eastern part of Virginia Beach and the southern part of Chesapeake. Very inefficient, not carrying people all that way. This facility will also accommodate the Virginia Beach trolley fleet. 16 replica trolley vehicles will be stored here to allow us to close down our 0.8 acre site that's over 35 years old and can't even hold a modern bus in that facility. This facility is being designed with electric charging infrastructure and can be segmented to bring on electric charging infrastructure as the fleet transitions from all diesel to electric. This administration has caused us to pause a little bit, and in addition, the 6 Proterra buses that we purchased a few years back, the battery electric buses have had some issues. The company went out of business, but we are still designing the building. In addition to being a sustainable green building, we'll also have in its storage yard the ability to charge electric buses. You can see some of the things here. When you go from 60-minute service down to 15-minute service and you add all those buses, most of those new buses will be stored out in this new division. It'll have storage for up to 100. Hampton right now can store 100 buses, and the South Side can store 184 buses. Our fleet is 348 buses, or soon to be. So we really are packed tight. The operating cost savings of running deadhead is, we estimate to be $650,000 per year. The statistics we see here for new weekday routers is related to 15-minute service. We had 125 new highly skilled jobs related to the electric bus fleet. It's a state-of-the-art net zero energy ready building. And the really good news is that $130 million project is primarily going to be funded by RTS and federal funds. There's no ask from any of the local municipal governments. Our target date for construction and completion of this facility is calendar year 2030. So for us, that's right around the corner. That's probably the biggest capital program element I could think of related to the bus system. So that's a quick update on the RTS. I'd be happy to answer any questions. and I'd love to come back.
What is the greatest challenge to retention of your drivers?
Great question. So it's first understand we have a unionized workforce. So in a unionized workforce and the way they pick their runs, twice a year we have runs that they pick, they choose their runs, seniority rules. So what happens is the senior, and I don't mean by age, I mean by how many years you work for HRT. The senior operators gets first picks, and what's left over are the more difficult assignments. Maybe they're interlined with another route. Maybe it's a split duty in which you have to sit in the middle of the day before the rest. They're required to drive 8 to 10 hours a day, but you might sit in the middle of the day waiting for the rest of your assignment. So what happens is, and then their preference is, in a perfect schedule, I like 5 days on, I like 4 days on, 3 days off, or 5 days on and 2 days off. Because we don't have enough operators to run the routes that we have now, what happens is when we know, and every day is a different day, that you're not going to have enough operators, we have mandatory overtime, and it falls to the junior operators first. So the very people that you're courting and bringing in and telling them it's a great place to work with a great starting wage rate are the ones you're burning out. And after 18 months, they move along because they have quality of life issues themselves. They have school children at home. They're working moms and dads. They'd like to be home when their kids come home. So it's really difficult. And I'd love to come back in the future to talk about our efforts under the system optimization plan, which is really looking at our 68 bus routes and 34 local routes and saying we have too much. That's some of these routes are not productive, yet they're driving our resource needs for bus operators. It costs just as much to carry 20 people per hour as it does to carry 3 people per hour. The inefficiency of taking a human being called a bus driver and putting him on 12 hours of service a day, or putting him or her on 12 hours of service a day, running once an hour to carry 3 people doesn't make sense. Some of our routes date back to streetcars days. We've never looked holistically as all 6 cities to say, these are highly ineffective routes, and I'd like to come back to talk about the SOP and the benefits of the SOP if we can tweak our service network to provide the same level of coverage, but with fewer routes, freeing up operators to then plow into the 15-minute service that we can't deliver right now. So the biggest challenge is quality of life. It's not salaries and wage rates. We work with them to address those compensations. We're working with them to look at things like on-site daycare or after-hour daycare, but that's going to unfold slowly. But when you're forced to work on a day off, it burns you out. When you're forced, it burns you out very quickly. That's honestly the biggest challenge we have right now.
Other questions for Ray? Yes, ma'am.
This is a statement. I know you have to look realistically and financially at the underperforming routes, but the problem is that you have a paratransit group that lives within that area that have fewer options than many, and they're heavily impacted if a route is reduced or phased out.
Janice, that's a great point. We're very cognizant of that. That's why we're looking at demand responsive services like microtransit, which has paratransit capability to cover those territories and use that via contracted services the way we do for paratransit services. We can carry those 3 people or 4 people at a much more cost-effective price per hour than we can with a big bus. And so we have 15 proposed zones, microtransit zones in the system optimization plan to cover some of those geographic areas. We can also tweak some of the fixed routes that remain to ensure that the 3/4 mile walk access is going to remain viable for all paratransit customers. So we're looking at that.
The one point I just want to stress, and Ray, this is hard for you to say, but on HRT's behalf and our other WADA and Suffolk Transit as well, keep in mind HRT can only work with the resources provided to them, right? So whether that is frequency of transit, whether that is what they're able to compensate their drivers, whether that
Mechanics.
is the bus stop amenities
And mechanics, you know.
and mechanics and everything else that they need to operate an effective transit system. This is why, as a regional transit advisory panel and a group of advocates for public transit, it is just very important for us to lean in and help our 3 transit agencies. Investment in public transit is investment in our quality of life, investment in our communities, and an investment in our people, which is why we're all here, right? And I think that, you know, and this is one of the things I'm really excited about this group, right? When we ask you to go up to Richmond, you show up and you come up there. And when we do Regional Transit Advocacy Day in this region, you walk with HRT and our other transit partners. I think we got to keep expressing to, as you see your local elected leaders, it's important for them to hear from you that transit is important and that we need to keep investing and push the envelope in investing more in public transit if we're going to be able to meet these goals. Otherwise, what Whitney was talking about, right? What Ray's just showed us is what happens, right? More resources, 15-minute service, boom, right?
It's ironic.
Yeah.
I've been here long enough, Bob, to know that in the past, it was financial funding for better operating service and buying and investing in passenger amenities was always a challenge for this agency. Because of the generosity of the General Assembly and the partners in this region, the money is there. It's ironic now that our challenge is not having enough bus operators, not having enough qualified mechanics. It's I can't tell you, a week doesn't go by that I don't get a phone call from HRT commissioner, a city council person, or a citizen. Fill in the blank. I'd like more service. I want to go here. I want to go there. Top of the list. I don't think a day goes by if I don't get somebody calling me, why isn't there bus service to the airport, Norfolk Airport? It's all the time. So I've worked with Norfolk and Councilwoman Mamie Johnson, and we have a plan to modify the Route 9 to go into the airport. Except for the route, to do that extra coverage, it needs 5 additional operators. We're down 50 now, so we were going to implement that in October, but the hiring people tell me they can't guarantee that we'll have 55 people by this October. We hear these requests, and it really is sad to me that we can't deliver. The city of Virginia Beach just asked, we'd like to reestablish next summer season the circulator on the Route 34. The water park's going to be open and do a circulator that connects the other wave routes. I'm already worried about, will we have enough seasonal operators next summer to do that? The city of Hampton wants higher frequency on a couple of routes that are not hourly service. So really right now, the biggest challenge that we're facing is bus operators.
Dr. K, did you have, I'm sorry, Whitney, that'll come your way.
I just have a really quick question. I was fact checking before I asked the question. Do you all have any partnerships with some of the nonprofits, specifically the nonprofits that are designed to assist formerly incarcerated people with developing stable employment?
We get that. The answer, the short answer is we try to have those partnerships, but again, the way we're funded, usually we can help by giving out some transit passes, but.
No, I'm talking about to hire.
You're talking about?
To hire
Some
and
hires.
train.
Oh, our human resources does have partnerships to identify folks that want a job that would meet the DOT requirements. So we do have that, and certain cities have partnered with us. Norfolk and Newport News especially have partnered with us through some of their programs to identify. We'd love to have more partnerships, especially those folks that are coming out of the military that might have some skill sets to drive buses or be a mechanic, because mechanics is important. You got to get the equipment always ready to go out as well. I mean, that's another competitive area because the private sector pays so much more. But we have some partnerships. I don't have the details, but I can get them from our HR department.
Okay. I specifically.
Indeed, they are. We have limited capability of giving out transit passes to nonprofits simply because of where we're funded. But I understand.
And what about what about hitting the colleges, universities, and vocational schools? Not everyone that graduates will have a job.
Correct.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I was just going to piggyback on what you were saying, partnerships with like community colleges, maybe to form a pipeline with the CDL classes and things like that. So I would
And-
love to talk.
And we do that as well, especially with the community colleges. And we have a pipeline to obtain your commercial driver's license to get the CDLs. We pay for it. We pay for the training. We help usher you through all the way the process to get the CDL.
Yes, sir. And then we're going over to Whitney then.
Yeah, I had a question about how often the different organizations are looking at autonomous systems for public transportation.
What kind of systems?
Autonomous systems, how often are
Oh.
the three different organizations looking at that?
Andrea's smiling because she knows my answer on that. So we joined a coalition, I'll call it, a couple of years back, and I was a representative for HRT, and we went out and met with other properties that are interested in autonomous, and we had a pilot project that was going to test that concept on the Route 960 along 264, because the 960 comes in from the ocean front. What the challenge is for autonomous vehicles is that human beings are not predictable and can be erratic at times. Autonomous technology works best in slow urban speed environments. The technology firms that were in the coalition stood up and said 25 miles an hour or less, we can detect someone darting out in the middle of the street between parked cars. When you get above 25 miles an hour, that guy or gal who didn't signal the car and moved over into your lane or cut you off because they're angry and gave you the finger, the sensing devices aren't there yet to avoid a crash. So the higher the speed, the more the technology needs to evolve. The bigger challenge is when you have a fleet of 348 buses, my friend Steve Florian there can tell you from technology perspective, any evolving or emerging technologies that you make an investment today for your fleet, in 3 years it could completely be obsolete. Think of your laptop or your computer, the length of time for that. And that's a heavy investment when you go to autonomous vehicles with all the sensors and computer technology and talking to the fixtures that are on the street light that repeats back the information to tell you what's there. Within 3 years, everything you invested in will be out of date. So for transit properties with large fleets, they tend to wait until the technology matures. It's there in slow environment, but when you go above 25 miles an hour, you're gonna hurt somebody.
So what I'm going to do is one more question for Ray. Whitney's been patient with me, and then I'm going to ask Ray to introduce our next speaker because I want to be certain we have time before people have to move on to hear about the regional fare analysis. But Whitney?
Oh, Whitney.
You're trying to expand the microtransit option. Do you think it'd be easier to find drivers for that function compared to typical bus routes?
They don't have to hold a commercial driver's license, but we're going to contract that out because we don't have the vehicles in our fleet. So it'll be a turnkey operation the way we have in the first 2 microtransit zones, and we have 15 proposed. So we got a couple of grants this year that allow us to try it in the city of Hampton, the city of Chesapeake, and more to come. I'd love to talk with you about the presentation I saw. I have a lot of suggestions for you.
Fantastic. Well, Ray, thank you. And Ray, do you want to
Sure.
cue us up for our next group
Thank you,
of
Bob.
speakers?
So I'm really excited. This committee, when you all broke out into work groups, I think it was the hospitality subcommittee, tourism and hospitality subcommittee that educated me about how difficult it was for a tourist who might come into the city of Williamsburg and enjoy the city of Williamsburg and then says, hey, what gives? Why is it so complicated? I wanted to take a day or two to visit the oceanfront of Virginia Beach and enjoy what's out there. You have to have a doctorate degree to figure out how to get there. And I have to fumble my pocket 3 or 4 times to make the changes. One of the things that came out of that subcommittee was an expression of why can't we have a unified fare system between the 3 transit providers in the city of Suffolk, Williamsburg Area Transit, and HRT. So from a customer perspective, it's a seamless integrated system. It doesn't matter where you board and who's running that bus. It's works together and provides the same kind of information. So we applied for a grant from the state, got the grant. We hired a consultant, and Steve Florian from HRT, wave your hand, Steve. He's the HRT project manager, Fair Technology service manager, and his consultant is Andrew Pease from Arcadis, who's going to give us a presentation that I think you're going to find really exciting. He's looking for feedback from you all today to help him as he embarks upon the study. So come on up, Andrew.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for your attention. Thanks, Ray. As Ray said, my name is Andrew Pease, and I am a transportation planner and project manager with Arcadis. We're going to be leading the consulting team focused on the Hampton Roads Unified Fare Study. Sounds like a lot of you may have heard a bit about this project already, but we're initiating it now. I've been working as a transit planner for over 15 years, specifically in transit planning. And I've led a variety of fare studies, both here in the Mid-Atlantic region and nationwide. So all of those have focused specifically on enhancing transit equity and improving regional transit trip making, which are kind of the hallmarks of this unified fare study effort here in Hampton Roads. So we're excited to be a part of this. So just really quickly, we have a few slides to go through, broken out in these different agenda items here. We can talk about project participation. I'll just give you a brief summary of the project, talking about the purpose of the project as well. I'll talk to you about how we're initiating this project. That's part of why I'm here today. And then just briefly go over the next steps, and we'll have time for some discussion also. So talking about project participants. So really what we're doing is participating directly with HRT, WADA, and Suffolk Transit, not only with the members of the leadership from those organizations, but also with their staff across planning, operations, and maintenance, just so we can speak with them directly about all the different elements of their fare system, so we get a better understanding of what's going on, what the challenges are, what the considerations are, what the needs have been expressed as. So if we talk to all those groups together from all those agencies, the idea is that we would get a clearer and more comprehensive picture of what the status is for fare unification and the views of fare unification are region-wide. And just a brief snapshot of our consulting team. So I'm up there. I'm joined by 3 primary other team members. We have others as well, all of whom have some wide experience in transit fare studies and fare unification projects. Then in addition, we're participating here with your group, with RTAP, and some of the key elements of your involvement will be to coordinate with us and help inform us. We want you to remain aware of key project activities and milestones across the project. Help provide us periodic input about project findings, the various parameters of the project, and the direction we're going in, as well as helping to deliver various insights about your needs, your constituents' needs and demands and things of that nature. And then also hoping you can, be a participant in this project, helping us to advocate for the project and advance the project as we move along, helping to promote defined regional strategy across all of your constituencies, and then fostering support and buy-in among community leaders and decision makers in the areas where you represent. So. Okay, so just a quick summary of the project. Again, many of you might be aware of this. Really, the main purpose of the project is to help facilitate a study, identifying strategies for better connecting the transit agencies here in the region, better connecting HRT, WADA, and Suffolk Transit by developing alternatives for a unified fare system. As a part of that, we want to be aware of any kind of technological or institutional barriers that might exist that would prevent easy trip making between HRT, WADA, and Suffolk Transit systems. Basically, anything that inhibits the provision of a seamless transit experience. Those are the things that we want to help identify as a part of this project. And as a result, develop alternatives for eliminating any of those barriers in the fare arena, focusing on unifying the fare structures, policies, fare media, and just the overall system that allows people to move across the region in a seamless way from one agency to another. And then thinking of all of that, we also want to ensure that any alternatives that we advance do respect the autonomy of the region's 3 primary transit operators. So I don't expect you to actually see all the detail on this slide. This just gives you an idea of the project timeline. The main idea here is that we want to complete this project by the end of this calendar year, by December. You can see right now we're in the early phases. The bulk of the project is going to be focused from midsummer through mid-fall, let's say, where that's when we'll be actually developing the alternatives, helping to model them, and coming back to you all to talk about the different strategies involved and get input about what could represent a viable and advanceable solution for this region. And then just a few key considerations and assumptions related to the project. Obviously, considerations include the concerns and needs of each of our agency partners. So HRT, WADA, Suffolk Transit, figuring out what commonalities and differences exist across those agencies. Also want to make sure we consider any rider needs and demands that have been brought forth to you all. And then what I just mentioned, unifying structures and systems. That's something we want to do, but we definitely want to consider the maintenance of each agency's autonomy as we do that. And then just a few brief assumptions, mainly related to making sure we're going to continue to participate with you all, not only with our agency partners, but with this group as well, so that you remain informed, that you can remain contributing to this effort. We're going to be gathering data from different agency partners as we move across the project. And then we're holding collaborative workshops actually this week, where we're going to be talking about the needs assessment. We'll be conducting more collaborative workshops as we move forward at key points within the project where we need more input. And then just briefly, this is a list of data request needs we've put out to HRT, WADA, and Suffolk Transit. They're going to be helping us deliver this data so we can start moving forward with the project. Okay, so project initiation steps. So this kind of goes over where we are currently. The main reason why I'm here this week is to talk to you all, but also to help facilitate some needs assessment workshops. So we already held a kickoff meeting a couple of weeks ago with the transit agencies, but now we're back to conduct these needs assessments, where really what we're doing is diving into 3 different workshop sessions. One's going to be held with each different agency. We're going to be holding them between today and Wednesday. We're going to be conducting qualitative interviews with each agency, where we're asking detailed questions to get as clear a picture as we can of what types of fare systems exist across those agencies, what their fare policies are, what fare structures exist, what kind of fare media is out there, how their riders feel about everything, how their bus operators feel about everything, what's working, what's not working. These are the types of interviews we're going to be holding. And then in addition, we'll be conducting field observations on each agency's vehicles or at their yards to help better understand what fare systems are in place out there, how people are engaging with the fare system, and what opportunities there are to help link the 3 together in some sort of unification process. And then, yeah, in general, we'll be having discussions during those interviews with planning, operations, maintenance, and leadership personnel, again, so we can kind of get a clear and robust picture of what's going on fare-wise at the 3 agencies. And then furthermore, we'll be doing a peer review of sorts, an industry scan, we're calling it. So we've listed some brainstormed ideas for peer regions and also fare unification efforts that we think might be relevant for review. These are still being vetted with the agencies. One of the goals of this week will be to help determine what peers we actually want to move forward with in looking at. We wanted to look not only at regions that are similar to yours, but also a list of areas that are focusing on fare unification. So that's why we have the 2 lists you see on the screen. In terms of peer regions, after conversing with HRT and the other agency partners, thinking of regions that you often look to as peers in the transit arena, Jacksonville and Cincinnati were mentioned, so that's why we added them to the list. But we also thought it would be useful to look at regions that aren't dominated by one specific urban center and a lot of smaller ones. Hampton Roads obviously is a place that has multiple urban centers that collaborate. So we thought Raleigh-Durham, being in the southeast, not too far away, of somewhat similar size, would be an interesting region to look at to see what kind of fare issues they have there and what kind of unification efforts, if any, are going on in that location. But we've also named several places that have interesting fare unification policies already enacted or efforts that we could potentially review. We put Atlanta up there. They're currently looking at a regional transit fare policy unification effort that involves all the agencies listed. Montreal was one we noted. There's some other Canadian examples that are interesting also. Montreal's is particularly interesting because they, with their program, they've actually linked and unified the fares, not of their entire networks, but of their bus networks between Montreal and some of the suburban agencies, which might be interesting to look at. And then in addition, we listed Tampa Bay. That's an example of a region obviously larger than yours, but it has multiple urban centers, and they have an effort going on called Flamingo Fares, where they're trying to unify or at least make it easier to pay fares for people riding between HART and PSTA, which are the two main transit agencies in that region. But again, please note, these are ideas at this point. We're still vetting them. If anyone has any input or ideas about peers that we should include or other examples that we may not have noted, we'd be all ears. Okay, and just to close things out, just a quick look at next steps. So like I mentioned, we're going to be facilitating the needs assessment workshops this week. So that'll really give us a good leg up on moving forward to the next step of the process. As a part of those, we'll be refining that peer list that we just talked about. Then we'll be completing the industry scan. And the idea is to complete the needs assessment and the industry scan by early July, so that starting in mid-July, and also after we obtain data from the operators that we've requested, we can move forward into the alternatives development process, which, like I said, is the bulk of our project. Once we do identify alternatives, once we do some modeling and vetting of those, the plan would be to come back out here and introduce those to this group, and also have some additional workshops with the agencies so we can really hone in on what strategies we think would be most effective for the region. And yeah, I think that's about it. That should provide a pretty clear snapshot of where we are with the project today. If anyone has any comments or questions, feel free.
Andrew, thank you. This is super exciting. And again, back to RTAP and Ray's opening comments. Remember, this came from your work groups as an idea. And, you know, just like the base circulator at Naval Station Norfolk, your ideas advanced. So that's a great summary. But any comments for Andrew or questions? He had shown you some peer regions they're looking at. Any feedback you have on other areas that he ought to be looking at?
Another one we noted that does have a fair unification process going on is the Twin Cities in Minnesota. Again, an example of a place that has multiple urban centers, and they are working to ease regional transit trip making in a place that has multiple, multiple political powers and entities kind of in competition. So we thought it might be an interesting one to look at in comparison with Hampton Roads.
Andrew, is Charlotte doing anything that we could learn from?
It's a good question. So we looked at Charlotte briefly. We haven't taken a huge dive into this yet, so that's a good one to look at. I don't know of any specific regional effort that Charlotte's undergone, but that's one we can look at. We looked at some other examples in Virginia too, Northern Virginia obviously being a place where there are lots of different agencies. They do not really have a unit. They've had various fare studies, but unifying across the different agencies is something they haven't done. It's a very big challenge in that region. But Charlotte's an interesting example, so I think that'll be a good one for us to quickly look at. Is that a city that you often look to as a peer region?
Go ahead, Pivot.
We had gone on an interregional visit.
Oh, wow. Okay. Oh, great. Okay. Yeah, we'll take a look then. That's great to know. Thank you.
So one other thing I was going to ask is, I know you're looking at regions that are similar and regions that have, but are you thinking of looking at regions that have done it and learned like lessons? Yeah, never again I'm going to try this.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. So that was one of the points of that second list on that slide. It was places that are either have fare unification studies underway or have already enacted that. So the ones I listed off the top of my head, I know Atlanta was there as one that's underway. Montreal has one that's in effect. I know Toronto has something like that as well. San Diego, while maybe a much larger city than this, they have unified fares across their different agencies as policy, a matter of policy there. So that could be an interesting thing to look at as well. But yeah, for sure, we definitely want to look at examples where things are underway. Oh, the other one I mentioned was Tampa Bay, which has their Flamingo Fairs program, again, in process. So
Yeah, the only reason I asked that is because Puget Sound has the RTAP card.
right.
They kind of unifies that. That would be, it's much
Yeah.
bigger though.
Right, exactly. It's hard to find examples of places that are exactly like here, period, let alone those that have some kind of regional fair unification study going on. So we'll have to do kind of a mix of the two. But yeah, Seattle's an example.
Couple of questions back.
Just one question. You know, Andrew, unified fairs would be great for this market with 5 cities and 7. I mean, it would be great. I just have one question. What is the major obstacle you found in most cities or most regions when you try to unify fairs? I mean, what is it?
Sure.
Is it buy-in from the localities, or the fact there might be a higher subsidy from the localities in order to make this happen? Or higher fare? I mean, I'm just curious. What is it?
So I think it depends upon the region, but I would say the most common stumbling block is having deep-rooted either transit agencies or jurisdictions, what have you, that not necessarily are unwilling to collaborate, but adjusting their fares or their systems to match up with other ones. That can be an uphill climb, not only for political reasons, but also for reasons of collecting revenue and things like that. I'm not exactly sure if that's going to be the case here in Hampton Roads. It'll depend upon what we find throughout our analysis. But yeah, that's one of the main issues. In addition, I'm thinking of, for example, I worked on a fair study in the San Francisco Bay Area. Again, not much larger context than here, but lots of different transit agencies, numerous different urban centers, and getting all of them to play nicely together and link their systems together, because not only of them wanting to maintain their autonomy, but also them wanting to, promote the systems that they've invested in, that they've put into place in each of their systems. It was difficult to make them, have them adjust any of that. So yeah, this is a different scale here, so it'll be interesting to see what happens here. But it sounds like you're already multiple steps ahead in having this group and talking about this and wanting to come together on this in the first place. So I don't know. It sounds like we're already going in the right direction.
Dr. K?
Curious. I was recently driving out in Suffolk and I saw a trailer home area. And then I was in another area, I think it was Chesapeake. Those who know me know that I'm still getting to know the area. But I think I was out in Chesapeake because it was by Lakeview Park or something. So this is why I'm asking this question, just to give some background. I'm curious, how many people are on this committee that are from lower socioeconomic communities that are directly impacted by whatever decisions are made regarding regarding fares?
So I think it's always an area we can do better. I think that we try to cast a net as wide as we can with this panel. We turn no one away from participation here, and will certainly welcome as much representation, as broad a representation as possible. This group was formed by the General Assembly as an advocate, if you will, for transit, and they were very precise in terms of who we were to have on the Regional Transit Advisory Panel. I know that HRT and our transit systems work really hard with community groups and committees, and they have their own ridership representatives that provide that input and that lens. So I think for this RTAP, we would embrace additional representation, and if anybody can give us help of helping us connect, that would be fantastic.
I'm happy to help with that. I was really inquiring about the group that was shown on the screen, all of the different participants in this particular study, and wondering if there were any intentional efforts to include people from lower socioeconomic communities on this particular study.
Well, I know during the kickoff meeting, those of us who attended, we did talk about discussing other community stakeholders that we might want to involve and inform about this effort and bring to the table. I think that's something else we plan to discuss this week when we do these workshops. But I think that's really great input and will give us an impetus to talk about that. I think that, making sure the study that you put forth on something as sensitive as transit fares is respectful of all the different people who ride transit is really important. Another element that I know the consulting team will be working on when we do our analysis is making sure that we focus on any kind of rider survey results that either HRT, WADA, or Suffolk Transit has received from not only their riders, but their community members. A lot of times, transit agencies will conduct surveys like that to talk about what not necessarily what people think about fares. Sometimes they do, but what are riders' biggest issues? What are their biggest impediments to using transit? So looking at any of that information will be really helpful to us as well, and that could provide us some more equitable representation from across different communities. Sure.
All right, well, Andrew, thank you so much, and we look forward to updates.
I just had one quick question. Are you guys looking at any European models?
We might be looking at some as a part of the peer analysis. We haven't specifically done that. It's good to bring up though, because having fare unification is commonplace over in Europe. So if you have any specific suggestions, yeah, let us know. Thanks.
Joanne, do you have a quick one?
Yeah, I was just going to say in support of her comment, sometimes in working with the continuum of care that's trying to support those experiencing homelessness, we try to have somebody who's got lived experience at the table to make sure that we're spot on. But that becomes difficult sometimes because just getting them there, you need incentive and transportation, and some of the logistics can be difficult. But if you were to have some sort of meeting where minimally the nonprofit groups that are working with people experiencing homelessness typically are unemployed, typically can't get transportation to the job interview because they're, it's
right,
like
of
that
course.
vicious cycle. But if you were to get 4 kids and some of the bigger regional entities at the table who are serving on the continuum of care, the Planning Council serves as the lead agency for the continuum of care. So
Okay.
I can help you identify those who are really, boots on the ground in that regard, if you're ever putting that kind of a meeting together to get that population heard.
Yeah, that would be great. And I think that's something we want to help line up as a part of our discussions this week. So that's super helpful. Yeah. Thanks.
Joanne, Dr. K, thank you for those comments. Really important. And Ray, and for our transit providers, if we can help, maybe call a group together of people to help you put that together for this analysis, we'd be happy to help out Andrew with that.
Just a thought here, because for HRT, we have a disparate customer base that have representation. The Transit Riders Advisory Council, people use transit every day, Paratransit Advisory Committee, as well as other groups that we work with together, whether a third-party transit provider. We welcome that input because, there's 2 elements to this study. Technology for each transit agency is at various degrees of investment. I'm going to guess that Suffolk is at the lower end of the spectrum and HRT is probably at the higher end. So the first element of the study that our case is challenged with is figure out where are the gaps so that you can make the things talk to each other. All 3 transit agencies are keenly aware that money placed into the fare box revenue is revenue to help pay for operations. So how does a person who boards a bus in Suffolk and is going to Virginia Beach, how does that revenue get credited to Suffolk because it was generated in Suffolk? So of course, technology can take care of that, but you need to understand the state of the art of where everybody's fare box is at, where they are with mobile fare payment and all of that. So that's one element, but what Andrew was referring to that we need stakeholder involvement is, what's the expectation of the user when they board a bus and they want to move throughout this region, the greater Hampton Roads region, not the 6 cities of HRT's footprint, but the big region? What do they want to see out of it? And that's where we need help, Dr. K, because the technology part, they're going to figure that out. And we're playing nice with each other. And then
Good.
there'll be eventually a price tag. Oh, in order to get everything to work together, somebody's going to have to make some capital investment. We're going to have to go find money for that. But that's the easy part, believe it or not. The harder part is to find out what the user wants and how that unified fare system will be affordable and make sense to them. So that's where we're going to need the help.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yep.
Thank you, Ray. Well, Andrew, thank you. Look forward to having you back and hearing updates on this. It's exciting work. Noel, I think with due to time's sake, and I'm watching everybody check their phones, we're going to defer our regional legislative update. I didn't do a really good job. I apologize, but the conversation's too important to cut it short. I did, though, want to take the opportunity just to save a little bit of time. I always enjoy the around the horn. You don't have to say anything, but if there's some experience you've had with transit, something exciting happening in your organization or company that you'd like to share, we always like to give everybody a chance. So Pavitra, why don't we start with you and just go left? Anything from Water or Suffolk Transit today?
So I'll just add one thing, Bob, but kind of listen to what everyone's saying today and a lot of the conversation that we've had. Obviously with funding being a bit of a challenge here recently, we've kind of been digging into it and doing some homework just on federal allocations. And, as we talk about designing our communities for transit services, part of our federal assistance funding is based on 15-year population projections and current densities of those places. So when it comes to helping public transit, just the way we live and the way we're designing these communities are already benefiting us as transit agencies through these other federal assistance programs. So just want to kind of put that out there. I think the allocation for the two programs that they have, it's 5340 funding, was about $630 million. So competing nationally for that with everyone else. But the way that you all are working together certainly pays dividends to us as the transit agencies.
Great, thank you. Suffolk, anything to add?
I will say we were awarded a competitive grant for low or no emission vehicles. And we did run into the problem that when we went to go order vehicles, a body on chassis electric vehicle does not exist. And it is not set to exist anytime in the near future. So in order for us to even try to use that grant, we had to apply for a scope change with FTA to downgrade them to high roof vans, which then means they can't replace buses because you can't take a 19-passenger bus and replace it with a van. So there are some challenges to that. And even through that process, we got the scope change, we submitted the application, and even FTA was like, we don't know when or if this is going to be approved for you to even order these vehicles. So on the federal side of that, these low and no emission vehicle conversations are great, but even FTA does not feel overly confident that this is an avenue that we're getting anywhere fast. So just kind of throwing that out there are some challenges I know for transit agencies when it comes to looking at vehicles that you can use on transit. There's little to no true options unless you're going very big, and very big is very expensive.
Thank you for sharing that. That's a good realistic report from the front, right? Any coming down the side here? Anything to add?
Well, I'm a lady of few words, but senior services, along with the RPT, we have started the EV feasibility study.
Okay.
For our vehicles and stuff, and how we can go forward into the future.
Great, great. Well, hope you'll fill out Whitney's survey and your clients as well. Would be great feedback. Quan, Joanne, Denise.
Janice, just to revisit, I'm going to continue to push that we need to seek departments of philanthropy for the different corporations and the casinos.
Good points. Going down, Gil, anything to add?
Hey, Greg Lewis, sorry I was late. We dropped with Future of Hampton Roads. We put the Forward Thinking magazine on your desk. Take a look at that. Also working on a hybrid electric maritime platform. If anybody's interested in that, ferries both for the private sector and the public sector, and the infrastructure that goes along with that.
Fantastic.
I would just like to say, one of the things you might want to consider doing when you go to Suffolk in the area, our agency works with Workforce Development, which is downtown and services that area. We've been in conversation with Suffolk Transit on some various and sundry things. So I'm going to give you my card afterwards, and maybe we can hook you up with that specific area.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks. Maria, we can talk about that.
Going around the corner, Brad, Laura, Noel, Rick, before you go, he's shaking his head though. I did want to make a quick introduction here. Marcellus, you back there? I asked Marcellus if he had time from his busy schedule to stop by. This is Marcellus Nixon. Marcellus is I can't say new anymore, Marcellus, but he is the executive director of your regional broadband authority. It's currently called the Southside Network Authority, where he's supervising the build out of about a 120-mile regionally interconnected fiber ring, and he's working with the peninsula, how that gets extended over to the peninsula. If you have questions or want to have a discussion about technology and fiber and broadband and how we're going to leverage this to boost the economic competitiveness of Hampton Roads, Marcellus is your guy, and I'm sure he has some ideas on technology in that fair network, But Marcellus, I just want to give you a moment. If you haven't met him yet, please take a moment and afterwards and introduce yourself. All right. Okay. Thanks, Marcellus. VDOT, anything that? All right, back to you, Rick. Around the table, Dr. K, anything more? Coming down, Ray?
Yeah, I just had a quick note, really just in praise of HRT, Ray, and City of Norfolk. Last year, I participated for the first year ever in the Week Without Driving, which, just to put on your calendars, is coming up again, September 29th through October 5th. I really urge you and encourage you to try it. I did it on a whim. It's really something you should plan for and not do on a whim. But I wrote about my experience. But last year in my neighborhood, I had a really, really difficult time getting to my HRT stop. Well, my stop was a sign. It did not have a shelter. I also had no infrastructure in which to get there. No crosswalks, no sidewalks. I stood in the grass and waited for my bus. We are not even a full year later, and City of Norfolk, thank you. There are sidewalks. There is a crosswalk in my neighborhood, and HRT, there is a connecting sidewalk to the sidewalk with a beautiful shelter and a bench. So I'm seeing those things in place. And I just want to really say that on that stretch of sidewalk, just in the past 2 weeks, I have seen families with strollers and cyclists and walkers like I have never seen in my community. And I'm just really appreciative and grateful for that. So thank you.
Thanks, Kendra. Diane? Todd, coming around the corner. Peter?
I just remember reading several years ago where 75% of the U.S. economy is generated on only 25 of the U.S. land. And if that's the case, we darn sure better make sure we can move our labor force around, because that's where the concentration is taking place. And as Dr. K says, there's an awful lot of people who are out in the hinterlands who desperately need transportation just to get to the interview. And everywhere we look, we see labor shortage. So one of the ways to fix it is getting those people to those interviews. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you, everybody. I sincerely appreciate your time and for the conversation today. Looking forward to our next meeting. Take care. Have a great week.